starting here on this slide, I'm curious if anybody feels like this person over here pushing the rock up the hill at the moment, moment that we're having this webinar. I've been in this situation myself. Interestingly, and coincidentally, today I'm sitting in a client site doing a CMMI Level 3 appraisal and seeing the fruits of one organization anyway who has taken to heart really the topic of this presentation on organizational change management. And so my week so far anyway does not feel like the proverbial pushing the rock up the hill. It's actually the opposite, and I'm happy to kind of have that context as we start on this presentation, because change is hard, and if some of you out there are process improvement leaders or are line managers and are having some of these experiences of doing in the middle of a process improvement program, whether it be CMMI, ITIL, Six Sigma, or trying to introduce something new like portfolio management, and really wherever you are in that infrastructure, whether you're the change agent or the sponsor or a team leader, you probably have had this sense before of change being really, really hard. Certainly the same thing with line managers who might be trying to transition or transform one of their organizations. So, hopefully none of you or very few of you have actually had the rock roll back down on you, which is what I'm saying at the bottom of the slide, because sadly, I've been in a couple of those situations myself as an insider in an organization. I'm now consulting and just have had some wonderful revelations over the last couple of years. And all the years that I've been doing process improvement and consulting, I guess the epiphany came to me that, I myself and many of us in the business tend to focus on what I'm going to call in this presentation change management, rather than what many of the experts in the industry call change leadership. And I'd like for us to talk about what goes wrong, so we can perhaps diagnose what's happened in the past with us and where we have maybe been focusing in not a very well balanced way, and talk about how we can overcome the difficulties of making change happen in organizations. It's one of the hardest things that you do as a change agent. So I want to talk first about what is organizational change leadership. How is this different than what we do, as process improvement change agents in our organization. And then talk about, in my experience, what some of these common change problems are. And then talk a little bit about, or have you think, yourself, is there some way to kind of assess how ready your organization really is for change? And to possibly even look at it in the context of something like the CMM, is the maturity of the organization such that it's ready for change? And then talk about what to do with this. So starting off, the first thing is try to put this in context a little bit. Some of you have probably seen these kind of charts before, but, typically when we're working on a change initiative, what you're trying to do is successfully, migrate from one way of doing something to a new way. And for many of us, it's hard to recognize, and it's hard to sell the fact that moving from one state to another is going to create, in most cases, a transition state that is less than the present state. In many cases, that transition state is going to be disruptive. In some cases, there's going to be a loss of productivity when the organization is transitioning. And really, change management and change leadership are really about managing the amount of time and money that's spent in the transition, and going to talk about change leadership from the perspective of how we can lead the organization through that transition state. So, the next slide talks about, and again, it's just a standard, change model that you see out in the literature. There's lots of these, and many people have models like this, but I chose this one because it's just another definition of what we're trying to do with change and what's happening in that change transition. We're altering, people's actions and behaviors. And, many cases we have to get through this change cycle We have to get beyond the confusion and the denial, and in some cases anger that's created as we try to move somebody's cheese, if you will, through the bargaining and the depression and onto, that new desired state and onto a higher level of productivity. And really, a lot of the change management literature is about the fact that these are about individual actions and individual behaviors. And, it's about getting somebody to make a choice to change, not just to intend to change, but to actually make a choice to change. And so in order to do that effectively, we have to understand that, and we have to understand where people are in this change process. So, the thing I like about this, too, is it kind of highlights the fact that change, when you start thinking about it, the change that you're trying to inject in an organization has an organizational component, but it also has an individual component. It's very important. Perfect illustration of this in the previous slide, why and what happens in terms of lower productivity when we're in a transition state. I have a client that is in the process of formalizing their development process, their software development process. It's quite a large organization, and one of the things that they're implementing are more rigorous standards around design, coding, and in addition to that, code inspections and peer reviews of their design documentation. And for the first time, the organization, just based on the best practices that are in that industry and what years and years in research has shown, is the importance of defect collection in that process, to understand, to get some profound insight into what's going on, what's going wrong in your processes, and where rework is happening, where improvements can be made. Well, there's a lot of energy right now. Everybody's kind of wallowing around in this pit as the requirements for doing these new activities and doing collection of actual defects. Everybody's in the kind of somewhere between the end of the old and the beginning of the new right now, and a lot of energy is going into challenging the new process. Having emails, coming in repeatedly from the change agents, crying for help. What do we do? We're getting these kinds of arguments. They're programmers grousing in the hallways. People are coming up with imaginary scenarios about how the data is going to be misused and just, fueling the rumor mill. People are writing impassioned emails, which of course, are taking time away from their real job, about being judged and penalized, if one guy grades tougher. And really, the discussion is uncovering all kinds of hidden and wrong assumptions that really need to be addressed by the management team and the change agents in the organization. So certainly, issues around a culture and an individual set of beliefs about people owning, code rather than the company owning the code, defects being some kind of a subjective thing rather than a very objective thing. All of this discussion is good, and it's good that these things are being surfaced, but it does take a lot of time away from tasks, and it's a perfect illustration if I just go back and, think about how this dip in productivity happens and what happens in this transition state, what is happening to this organization and how it needs to be managed. So let's talk about the difference between what I see anyway as maybe the way that many of us approach process improvement or organizational change, which is on the left side, versus these things that we need to be thinking about as well, which I'm calling organizational change leadership. So, we spend a lot of time on these CAI webinars talking about the how-tos of process improvement and measurement, and that's all fine and good, and that you obviously need that foundation. I'm a CMMI lead appraiser. I need, knowledge of the model. I need